Yes, hi. I'd like to welcome today Neelan Choksi, the CEO of Lexcycle, which is the makers of Stanza. Hi, Neelan. How are you today?
I'm great, Susan. How are you?
Good, good, good. Neelan, maybe you could, folks aren't familiar with Lexcycle or Stanza. Maybe you could kind of give a brief overview about what you guys have been doing.
Sure. Stanza is an ebook reader for the iPhone. We've kind of made a name for ourselves with a lot of users. We've got 2.5 million users that have come from over 75 countries that read lots and lots of books on their iPhones through Stanza.
Awesome. Now, question for you about DRM. I know you have a particular point of view on whether, what you think about DRM. Maybe you could talk about a little your point of view.
Sure. I mean, for someone who comes from the software industry as my background, it's hard to prevent pirates from copying things that they want to copy if they have their mind set to it. And in publishing, it's even harder because all you need is a typist to avoid any DRM systems. But it's a necessary evil in our business. So whereas I have a personal preference for no DRM, I do recognize that for our business we have to support DRM, and we do. We support the e-reader DRM system in Stanza at this time.
And that's because publishers are requiring DRM? Is that?
Yeah. So for all the front list content and a lot of the big name publishers all require some sort of encryption, digital rights management on the content they sell electronically.
Moving to sort of ebook pricing, what are your views on pricing, and whether you think this sort of Kindle $9.99 price is the appropriate price point? Is there downward pressure on pricing?
I think it's interesting, right? Because all the front list titles now are being matched by a number of the retailers in the U.S. It's not just the Kindle that has $9.99 pricing, but almost anywhere you look for the latest New York Times bestsellers, you can usually find them at $9.99. I would argue that a lot of the retailers haven't done that much analysis of the demand curve to say that $9.99 is the right price point. And the other thing is, I think it's going to vary. For romance, it's been pretty well established that kind of $4.99 is a far more acceptable price point. And for some educational and kind of computer manuals type stuff, the price point's much higher. So I think it's really going to vary by segment, and I think you're going to have to look at them from a title-to-title perspective.
Moving to sort of the mobile platforms, what's been your experience in the past 12 months of the development of mobile platforms for e-reading?
Sure. I know the iPhone a little bit better than I know most of the other mobile platforms because that's what Stanza's on. The iPhone has been incredible, partially because Apple's done a great job with the App Store. Books now are the #2 category behind games in the App Store as far as just types of applications being developed. So books have done very, very well. What we're seeing, though, is really just a reproduction of the physical book in the electronic world. And I think the more interesting things are taking advantage of the the device-specific features. So, for example, linking externally, right? The iPhone now has internet access, and it makes a great place to link. Or adding video or audio, and we're starting to see some initiatives coming out on that front as well.
Yeah, and actually I wanted to ask about what you foresee as sort of the new innovations in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some multimedia. I think it's going to be overused or abused initially. I think there's places where multimedia makes a lot of sense. For example, ornithologist's guide, maybe for bird watching, where you get the sound of the bird, the bird call with it. Makes a ton of sense. So I think there's going to be different uses of it. I think we're going to see a lot of stuff like extended content that you see from, like you see in DVDs. So I think there's going to be some advances on the content side, especially towards multimedia. And then I think we're going to see some commoditization on pricing for the devices themselves. So I think that's going to help bring ebook readers and multifunctional devices to a wider audience. And I think that's
so there's going to be a downward
We're seeing it already. Everyone who has an ebook reader for over a year has dropped price on it at some point in time, and then we're seeing a whole plethora of devices that are rumored to come out in the $150 price point, which I think is also going to be very exciting.
I understand that because you don't get data directly from customers, that there are other ways that you've had to get information about consumer behavior. What tools do you use to sort of stay abreast of today's book consumer?
Sure. So what you're saying, basically, we don't do our own retail. We rely on partners to do retail. So we get different levels of information from each of those partners, and we obviously take a look at that. That's what they bought. But we do a lot of work on Twitter. We use blogs. We search. We're constantly keeping abreast of, you name it. If someone's saying something about Stanza, I've probably read it. So it just in whatever form or fashion, and then. We also have forums on our website, and a big thing we do is we participate. It's not just a one-way street of people asking questions, but we participate. We help answer questions on a pretty regular basis. We do that to Twitter. I've been known to get on Twitter and do support calls and basically help someone through a problem that way. So by participating and by having an active conversation, more people are inclined to use those methods.
And you probably get a better sense of what their needs are, right?
Absolutely. I mean, we've done a survey on our website, and 14,000 people have responded to it. It was about where their primary place they read in Stanza. And again, it's just a telling statement that if you can engage the community, they're happy to work with you to help you make your product better, as well as tell you what you're doing right and wrong.
And where are people reading Stanza?
So the number one place people use Stanza for reading is in bed, and number two is while commuting on a train or a bus.
Okay.
So, and almost all of them have to do with the fact that the iPhone's convenient. It's in your pocket or in your handbag, so it's accessible and it's always near you.
But in bed, I'm surprised.
Well, the interesting thing is, the neat thing about having an LCD screen like the iPhone is that you don't have to have an overhead light turned on, so you're not annoying your partner that you're reading, whereas a lot of the e-ink devices require light, so there's always complaints about, having the light on and keeping your partner awake.
Interesting. How has Lexcycle changed since its acquisition by Amazon?
Very little. I have a boss, so that part's weird. But no, really very little. Everything we were doing before we were acquired still exists, including our main catalog is a partnership with FictionWise, which is a Barnes & Noble-owned company, which is kind of, a little interesting. So from that perspective, not a whole lot's changed. We're probably a little more focused on innovation than we were necessarily, whereas before we were probably a little more focused on revenue generation. So that's probably a little tweak that hasn't been noticed yet, but I think you're going to see a lot of examples of that in the coming year.
Yeah, I was going to ask, any clues as to what kinds of innovations?
Not yet. You're going to have to wait and see.
So, you're a relative newcomer to book publishing, and just, as you look forward, how do you see its future? Any thoughts as to how book publishing will be developing?
I think there's going to be more books written than ever before, and I think the accessibility and the technology out there, just like when paperbacks came out, it suddenly made it possible for more authors to be published. I think you're going to see electronic means, and you're already seeing it, right, with self-publishing and things like that, and then low cost to get the stuff out there. So, whereas I don't know if as many books are going to be sold, I think there's going to be a lot more content available, and I think the challenges are going to be discovery and how do you find this stuff and what stuff's good, and those are all, I think, challenges that we're going to have to get ready for.
Right, and one final question: what excites you about what's coming up in the future of book publishing?
I think just the fact that we're making it easier for people to read. We're making it possible for people on far reaches of the world to suddenly be able to get books that they never used to be able to get, to participate. There's a company in China that built on Stanza, and basically what they've done is they have 40,000 users who are authors who are writing books, sharing it with other folks.
Right.
And that's amazing.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Neil. It's really interesting. Appreciate your taking the time.
No problem.